Good evening and welcome to an absolutely gorgeous night here on the south of France. In this video, we're going to be exploring the Celebrity Equinox. I'm going to show you what life is like on board. As part of the video, we're taking a full tour of the ship and dipping into many of the different bars and restaurants to show you exactly what the experience is going to be like. So get comfortable, this one's going to be a good one. Well, I must say, she's an absolutely gorgeous ship, and frankly, I can't wait to spend the next 10 minutes or so together giving you a really good look around. Now, when it comes to a ship, the scale of this one, it's difficult to know where to start, but we'll kick off in many of the indoor areas. The shops, as you saw a moment ago, are actually well worth a visit on board. There's then a range of different entertainment hubs towards the front of the ship, kicking off with, of course, the all-important theatre on board. This was really impressive, I must say, to my shame. I never attended any of the shows on this particular sailing. It was just too busy, but my goodness, it was a really nice area to kick off with. Beyond that, there's then Celebrity Central. This is a multi-purpose venue towards the front of the ship. If, of course, you're attending an event here, it's good to know exactly where to go. Again, just head to the theatre, and it's not far from there. Next up, on the entertainment front, we'll take a quick look at the casino. Now, this was a real standout area for me on board. It was smoke-free, so a big thumbs up on that front. There was then also a decent range of tables. There was Texas Hold'em throughout the duration of the cruise, both in tournament mode on some of the sea days and also cash tables. In terms of the roulette and blackjack, they had tables which were $10 minimum, so overall not too greedy, and some of them even had 1-0, so an awful lot better than a recent trip to Vegas, that's for sure. The standout areas for me on this particular cruise, undeniably, were many of the deck areas. The solarium is absolutely stunning. It's covered in glass, thus it's temperature controlled, and this is an area where celebrities stand out an awful lot more than the likes of Royal Caribbean, their slightly more junior and more fun sister line. Now, as part of this video, as I said in the beginning, I want to show you the experience on board, so we'll get into many of the areas and actually see them together. As part of the solarium, I've actually lined up a few models for you to check out the hot tub. You can see exactly what that's like. This was one of my favourite areas on board, as I say, and well worth visiting as part of your time on the cruise. Here are a few of the models doing a fantastic job in the hot tub. The solarium itself is at the front of the ship. As you go a little bit further aft from there, you get to the main pool area. I have to say, throughout this cruise, I never found it too packed, even during the sea days. It's well worth a walk at night after dinner to burn off a few of those calories consumed in the dining room as well. It was a stunning area, adorned with a number of different bars. There was even the Tuscan Grill, which was a small diner-style restaurant, you could say, or cafe, right up at the top of the ship. It's the little things with Celebrity that really stood out for me. The ability to head on up, grab as many towels as you wanted, didn't need to check them out or check them back in. They even had sun cream that you could use in the main pool area as well. I know little things, but they do really make a difference. Again, heading slightly further aft towards the very top of the ship, you have the Lawn Club. This is something that's completely unique to Celebrity. They show movies up here. They even have a little glass blowing workshop as well, and even a mini golf. If you do get the opportunity, however, don't play it like this. This particular individual didn't do particularly well. Big thanks to my brother for that particular shot. Before we wrap up on all things outside areas, I did want to stop off at one of those pool bars to give you a little bit of an insight. This was the Mast Bar. The crew here did a fantastic job right the way through the duration of the cruise. I'm going to be doing a separate video in the coming weeks on the alcohol prices on board and whether upgrading to a full package is worth it, so do stay tuned to the channel for that one. And then last but certainly not least, this is the sports court on board, located right at the very front at the top of the ship. Now, talking about activity on board and burning off those cruise calories, we're going to be heading into the gym in just a moment. But before we do so, a moment to relax. We were given a guided tour of the spa, and this kicked off with the Persian Garden. This is an area that would be available to you if you purchased a treatment on board. If you do have elite status or above with Celebrity, you can also access here once free of charge during the cruise at one of the port days. I have to say, after just 5 minutes here, I did come out feeling incredibly relaxed. Those warm beds looking out to sea, I'm sure would be absolutely gorgeous, particularly on a sea day. Great way to chill out after one of the treatments on board. Alrighty, so that's more than enough relaxing for now. Let's head on into the gym and we'll check that out. Again, coming back to those little things on board, the fact that they had cold towels for you when you finished your workout and a range of different flavoured waters made a real difference. They're really nice, those small touches, I must say. In terms of the gym, I never found it particularly busy on board. The equipment was really very good. It wasn't the latest generation, but given the fact that, I guess, it's not used anywhere near as much as equipment would do in a commercial gym, it was all in fantastic working order. I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the gym on the few occasions that I managed to get in here during the cruise. Alrighty, and now for one of the most important parts of any ship tour is of course the room tour. Now, I've gone for a balcony stateroom. It's ever so slightly upgraded because it has a large balcony, so we'll check that out. But apart from the balcony, this room would mirror an interior room, an ocean view, so it's actually very similar to the vast majority of rooms on board. So without further ado, I'll show you around the room. We'll check this part out. I must say, the room's one of the real standout areas on this particular ship. We went for a slightly upgraded balcony room, which meant that the balcony was that bit more extended, and we'll check that out a little bit later into the tour. As for the room itself, well, I was actually really impressed. The bathrooms were noticeably larger than the likes of Royal Caribbean in their standard balcony staterooms, and that's something that we'll head on in and have a look into in a moment. And given the fact that the ship was built in 2009, and I can't imagine that they've done much to the room since, I thought everything was in really good working order. Of course, updated carpets and televisions and other bits that you'd expect as part of the dry dock operations. In terms of storage, I thought the room was perfectly decent enough for a couple of people on this front. Not too much in the ways of drawers, but actually those big cupboards above the bed were an absolute saviour throughout this cruise. On the charging front, it was both US and an also European plug socket. In terms of the wardrobe, well, this was actually quite a nice space, slightly differently located to what I've seen it more typically in the corridor area on other cruise ships, but again, perfectly decent enough. You had those little pull downs if you wanted to extend the hanging space, and there was more than enough hangers provided. As for that bathroom, I've already mentioned that it was a little bit bigger than what I've experienced on other cruise lines, and actually the camera is indeed doing it justice here. Nice and modern in terms of its design, and was nice to have that shower door as opposed to the dreaded shower curtain as well. As we head back into the room, we'll take a quick look at the balcony together. With this being an ever so slightly upgraded balcony room affording that larger balcony size, I ended up with a really interestingly shaped balcony on this particular sailing. It was actually slightly angled, which gave a nice view back down the ship, and it was even large enough for a sunbed. Quick word of caution on that front, however, there were others of us within our party that upgraded to the same room, and just due to the shapes of the balconies, that didn't have the sun loungers, so don't rely on that in this particular category, but you will, however, get a slightly larger balcony. As we take a short trip on one of the many glass elevators on board, it's a good time to head to the very top and the very rear of the ship to kick off our tour of all things food on board. We're kicking off here with the Oceanview Cafe. This is the more casual, more relaxed style buffet restaurant on board, and I must say this is an area where Celebrity absolutely excelled, particularly on all things sweet front. You'll see over the next minute or two some absolutely amazing looking desserts on board. In terms of the food itself, they rotated throughout the week. They had various different themes, be it Spanish, be it American, be it Italian, be it English, etc. It really was a great variety of different food types, so there was something there for absolutely everyone. They even had a separate gluten-free and sugar-free dessert station, so they were pretty good on all things food intolerances as well. What I would mention as a top tip is they did have a few days on board where they did have things in the Oceanview Cafe that were an extra little bit special. The seafood day, as seen here, and the dessert day, my goodness, were absolutely phenomenal. So do stay tuned to your onboard waiting staff. They'll know when some of the best days are coming up in the Oceanview Cafe, and it's well worth a visit. In terms of the seating, they had seating both inside and outside. That's everything, all things casual for now. Let's get smartened up and we'll head down to the dining room and I'll introduce you to that with the gang. So we're here in the main dining room. Every good dining room needs fantastic food and even better service. And it's thanks to Emmanuel on this cruise who's done an absolute fantastic job. Cheers. Emmanuel, I know you're watching. Once again, a massive thank you to yourself and your fantastic team throughout this cruise. It did make our cruise experience all the bit more special. In terms of the food in the main dining room, we're going to cover a couple of nights just here. We'll focus firstly on one of the standard nights on board, and I must say throughout the duration of the entire cruise, the food was a really very good level. When they do the slightly more formal night on board, or celebrity chic as they call it, for the second one, they further elevated many of the offerings, having lobster and all sorts, so I'll let you sit back and enjoy many of the offerings on display. Talking about elevated food offerings on board, a little bit later in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at one of our experiences in one of the specialty dining restaurants on board. For now, however, we'll keep the theme of the standard offerings alive. We'll head back on up to the solarium right at the very top of the ship to get an insight into the Spa Cafe. The Spa Cafe for me was a little bit of an oddity on board. All of the drinks were at an upcharge. If you have the package, however, they'd all be included. That was the premium package I refer to, and again, more coming on that in a little bit of a later video. In terms of the food offerings, well, they were ultra healthy. These will suit some, but for me personally, when you're on a cruise, it was a little bit over the top on the healthiness front. That all being said, the smoothies were absolutely fantastic, and if you've had a heavy night at one of the many bars, such as the world-class bar the night before, I'd highly recommend starting the next day off with the smoothie. It's a great way to rehydrate. Beyond the world-class bar down in the main entertainment area of the ship, if you fancy a more alfresco approach, you can head right up to the very top of the ship and head to the back. Above the Oceanview Cafe, you will find the Sunset Bar, and my goodness, with the views from here, absolutely fantastic. Real variety also of different seating areas, 10 out of 10 for this particular bar location. Again, if you fancy something a little bit more towards the fancy side, I'd highly recommend a trip down to the Martini Bar. There's an awful lot of showmanship here most nights of the cruise. This is a frozen bar that helps your drinks stay that little bit cooler as well. If you are going here, I'd highly recommend the toffied apple martini and also the lychee, but frankly, everyone I tried was really very good indeed. Next up, we'll head back to the top of the ship, this time at the very front, to check out the Sky Bar. This is a bit of an interesting space, I must say. It's multi-purpose throughout the majority of the evening. It of course serves as a bar, but it's also a bit of a late night spot. So for those wanting to party deep into the night, this is the place to head to. In terms of its theming, they went for a bit of a cosmic style of vibe on board, and for me personally, for such a prime piece of real estate, I've seen other ships do this far more elegantly. So for me personally, I'd actually consider heading to other bars for future cruises on the Equinox. And then perhaps leaving the best to last. As you enter in through the back of the ship, more towards the bottom, around the Deck 4 area, you'll find the Ensemble Lounge. This is where a number of the more premium, indeed specialty restaurants are located on board. The Ensemble Lounge itself had live music most nights, and it was a beautifully adorned bar on board. We're actually taking you here, however, as a bit of an insight into the Tuscan Grill, which is a specialty restaurant that we visited on this cruise. I've had the pleasure of visiting a number of the Tuscan Grill restaurants across the Celebrity fleet, and have to say, given this restaurant's unique location right at the back of the ship with the big floor-to-ceiling windows, if you can get in here for sunset with a table anywhere near one of those windows, my goodness, can the views be absolutely fantastic. As ever, with the specialty restaurants on board, the experience here is always very rewarding. We actually got this restaurant on a bit of a discount, so do look out for those before the cruise to see if they're offering any discounts. Really hope you've enjoyed this particular video. If you've got any questions whatsoever, do feel free to pop them below. I do enjoy hearing from each and all of you. All that's left for me to say at this moment in time is happy cruising, and I'll see you in another video real soon.